Saint Bonaventure, Conference on the Contempt of the World. There are in this world 7 things that, carefully weighed and attentively considered, would teach man to easily despise it, to conquer it, to flee it, and to incline himself to serve God. For to serve God is to escape from slavery. 1. The first thing is the pain that overwhelms the eager supporters of the world. What man, indeed, can remain without torment in honors, without tribulation in command, and without vanity in elevation? Thus, the damned will cry out at the end of time, "We have grown weary in the way of iniquity and perdition, we have walked in rough paths." Wisdom 5. They tire themselves on earth in their desires, and after this life they are prey to torments. Our heart will therefore find deep security in not being possessed by anything in the concupiscence of the century. If, on the contrary, it yearns after earthly things, it will never be able to taste peace or tranquility. What it does not have will excite its covetousness, and what it has will fill it with the fear of seeing it taken away. Guard yourselves then, my beloved, from cherishing the world and what is in the world. John 2, I mean the delights and riches of the world. Blessed is the man who knows Jesus Christ and ignores everything else. Unhappy, on the contrary, is he who knows everything and ignores Jesus Christ. To know many things without Jesus, someone has said, is truly to ignore, but to know Jesus Christ well, it is enough, even if you are a stranger to everything else. 2. The second thing to consider is that the love of the world makes us neglect a better good. Indeed, men full of this love are so devoted and eager to acquire earthly goods that they neglect heavenly goods. For the more they advance, under the influence of this love, in forgetfulness of God, the more they are abandoned and the more their soul hardens. At the same time, the more they cling to evil, the less they understand the goods they are losing. Having arrived at the contempt of God, they no longer feel how deplorable are the acts of such a life. But the saints, on the contrary, having no affection for this world, desiring only heavenly grace, the saints, I say, live in deep tranquility, for earthly happiness is nothing other than great misery. Oh, how happy is he who has been given to despise the world and serve Jesus Christ. To be a slave of the Lord is a good preferable to all freedom. 3. The third reason that should incite us to despise the world and temporal things is their vanity. The joy of the century is indeed only vanity. We sigh eagerly for its arrival when it is to come, and we cannot retain it when it is present. Everything passes, everything flies away, everything fades like smoke. Woe then to those who love such chimeras. Thus, someone wrote, "The present day is fleeing, and we still do not know what tomorrow will be. Will it bring pain or rest? Thus disappears the glory of the world." Yes, the world passes and its concupiscence passes with it. What will you choose then? To cling to temporal things and go with time, or to love Jesus Christ and live for eternity? Perfect men constantly have before their eyes the brevity of the present life. They live as if they were dying each day, and they prepare for the future with all the more solicitude, because a continual meditation on the end of all things shows them that what passes cannot have the slightest value, that what comes after this life being limitless is immense, and that what ends is nothing. Their soul, enlightened by the light from above, fixes on heavenly goods the gaze of attentive consideration, and the more it understands the reality of these supreme goods, the more deeply it despises those of the earth. Thus, the pleasures of this life, pleasures so esteemed by sinners, are in the eyes of the righteous only vile mud, and they flee as a calamity what is dear to lovers of the century, for they know that those are enemies of God, to whom the world is always prosperous. Oh, sinners devoid of intelligence and deprived of prudence! Ah, if they had wisdom, if they understood and anticipated the ultimate end of all things, they would feel how great is the multitude of the damned, how weak is the number of the elect, how frivolous is the vanity of what is earthly. They would recognize the appalling number of sins committed, the greatness of the good omitted, and the loss of time. They would guard themselves against the peril of death, the supreme judgment, and eternal punishment. Death shows us plainly that all that the wicked pursue in this world, that is to say, riches, pleasures, honors, must be the object of our contempt. It shows us that the labor of those who seek riches is vain labor, since man must return naked to the bosom of the earth, that the fatigue of running after pleasures is useless, since the most delicately nourished body will become the food of worms, that the ambition of honors is fruitless, since man will be covered with earth and trampled underfoot by other men and animals. Guard yourselves then, my brothers, from loving the world and what is in the world. Let us leave these vain and futile things. Let us only seek the goods that will not end. This life is full of miseries. Death will come to snatch it away from us all of a sudden, on the most unexpected day, and then there will be nothing but punishments for him who has neglected to take advantage of it. Enter into yourselves, O transgressors, and cling to him who created you. Dwell with him, and you will be unshakable. This world is vain and deceitful. The hour when it must end is uncertain. Death is horrible, our judge formidable, and the punishment infinite. For the fourth reason that urges us to despise this world is the inconstancy of its glory. Indeed, while man remains with the most joy and happiness on this earth, while he hopes to spend many more years there, he is suddenly taken away by death. His soul is separated from his body, and, full of miseries, it advances, trembling and in pain, towards a completely unknown region. It sees demons coming to meet it and escorting it. Where are now those courtiers of the world who, only a few days ago, lived in our midst? There remains of them only dust and worms. Notice well what they are and what they were. They were men like you. They drank, they ate, they spent their days in delights, and they descended in a moment to the bottom of the abyss. Here their flesh is abandoned to worms, and there their soul is the prey of eternal flames. Guard yourselves then, my brothers, from loving the world, but follow Jesus Christ who said, "My kingdom is not of this world." John 18. Sigh with all the desires of your soul after the heavenly homeland, so that you may possess it on the last day. There is no true consolation here below, but true life is found where death will never be feared. 5. The fifth thing that must withdraw us from the love of this world is the danger to which those who live there are exposed. What do men of the century do living according to the century? They sink deeper and deeper into sin, and their soul is so pierced with the wounds of their crimes that they no longer even feel it. Adultery, fraud, theft, lying, and all evils have spread abundantly. From the smallest to the greatest, all are devoted to satisfying their greed. Everyone pursues with unrestrained ardor the woman who is foreign to him. Jeremiah 8:5. Everyone only thinks of extending the limits of the domains. And there is no one, or at least there are few who think about ways to save their souls. Oh, how triumphant the demon is in our days. All follow the slope of sin. It is barely if a small number are converted. All our surplus goes to foolish expenses. We sigh after earthly goods. We have no thoughts but for earthly things. We disdain God and his commandments, and we listen without fear to speak of his formidable judgments. No, my brothers, do not love the world nor what is in the world, for everything that is there becomes a weapon for the use of the demon. But let us serve Jesus Christ. Nothing is better, nothing is more advantageous than a good life. 6. What leads us in the sixth place to flee the world is the inconstancy of the things it contains. We read that a philosopher exclaimed, "When I think of the joy and rest that a pure heart enjoys, of the happiness that fills an intelligence occupied in contemplating God, of the security and hope that a soul full of divine love enjoys, I tell myself that such a life is truly an image of the life of God himself. He is blind, he who gives himself over to something else, for everything that is uncreated deifies us. What then is our life, if not a race towards death? What is it to live, if not to undergo a long torment? If one wanted to judge each thing from a higher point of view, one would see that in everything there is only pain and misery. O supporters of the world! For what end do you work? Why torment yourselves for nothing, when it is in your power to possess the Creator of the universe? What more are you looking for? What could you be satisfied with if the Creator himself is insufficient for your desires? O children of men, how long will you have heavy hearts? Why do you love vanity and seek falsehood? Psalm 4. Guard yourselves from loving the world and what is in the world. Whoever wants to reach the promised land, that is to say, acquire the glory of the heavenly homeland, must necessarily cross the Red Sea using the rod of the cross, pass from Egypt into the desert, renounce a life of delights and the darkness of sin, submit to a laborious life and die with Jesus Christ on the cross of penance. It is thus that at the hour of death he will deserve to hear this sweet word spoken to the thief in the past, "Truly, I tell you, you will be with me today in paradise." Luke 25:7. Finally, what must ultimately extinguish the love of this world in us is the secret wound that earthly goods are accustomed to inflict on those who love them. It is difficult, indeed, to preserve oneself without stain in the midst of the vanities of the century, constantly exposed to danger. You cannot be safe for long. She is therefore happy, this soul whose pleasures are unaccompanied by any defilement, and who sees her purity increase in the calm of truth, this soul that the law of God penetrates with such happiness that it makes it victorious over all the pleasures of the flesh. Yes, he who has begun to taste Jesus Christ finds only bitterness in this world, for the flesh becomes intolerable to the soul that has enjoyed its Savior. 2 Book Soliloquies, chapter 22, St. Augustine exclaims on this occasion, "I beg you, Lord, let everything become bitterness to me. Be you alone sweet to my soul, you, the ineffable sweetness, who make the most bitter things sweet." It is this sweetness that changed the burning coals into delights for Lawrence, this sweetness that filled the apostles with joy when they returned happy to have been worthy to suffer insults for the name of Jesus. Andrew walks to the torment in intoxication and security, because he is going to enter into possession of this sweetness. It is to obtain it that Bartholomew abandons his body to the executioners, to taste it that John drinks the poisoned cup without fear. Peter had barely savored its delights, forgetting all the things of this world, he exclaims like a man in the throes of intoxication, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tents here." Matthew chapter 17. Let us remain here and give ourselves over to contemplation. We have no need of anything else. Only a drop of this happiness has reached him, and all other happiness becomes tasteless to him. What would he have said if he had partaken of that inexpressible abundance hidden in your divinity and that you reserve for those who fear you? It is from this ineffable sweetness that Agatha, your virgin, had drawn when she walked towards the prison, triumphant with joy and happiness, as if she had been invited to a brilliant feast. Finally, it is from this source that he had quenched his thirst, I believe, who said, "How great, Lord, is the abundance of your sweetness, of this sweetness that you have reserved for those who fear you. Taste and see how sweet the Lord is." Psalm 30-33. But he who has not partaken of this sweetness of God takes no care to withdraw from the defilements of earthly pleasures. It is a great blessing of the Lord to have renounced the vices and delights of this world. Let out groans, unfortunate lovers of the earth, you who destroy your body before its time and give death to your soul. Whence come these many infirmities and sudden deaths, if not from the excess of your feasts and the unrestrained use of pleasures? While you believe that you are enjoying them with happiness, you deceive yourselves, you forget your soul for your body, and before your time you hurl body and soul under the blows of death. Indulge in good food and get drunk, for after death you will no longer be able to do so. Sow corruption, and from corruption you will reap the divine sentence that the irritated judge will pronounce on the great day of judgment, saying, "Go, you cursed, into the eternal fire." Matthew chapter 25. Alas, your heart has hardened like stone, if you do not tremble at the thought that you are exposing yourselves to such a sentence because of the futile consolations of this world. But perhaps you will say that after spending your life in sin, you will confess it at the hour of your death and that you will obtain forgiveness from God. Alas, vain hope, false thought. It rarely happens that at the end of his life he deserves divine indulgence, who, in the days of strength and health, has not been afraid to make himself guilty against God. It is my persuasion, I hold it for certain, that he whose life has always been bad will not have a good end. The death of the saints is precious before the Lord, Psalm chapter 115, says the psalmist, but the death of sinners is detestable. Do not love the world then, my brothers, nor what is in the world. But flee from the midst of Babylon, leave her, the city of the Chaldeans, that is to say, the furnace of vices. Flee and save your souls. Run to the cities of refuge, to the places where religion exercises its empire. It is there that you will be able to do penance for past faults, obtain forgiveness in the present time, and await with confidence the glory to come.